Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We've almost come to the end of one of our sessions today, and before we move on to town halls and roundtables later. Now, assessments are never like before, and we must think out of the box to help students learn and interact in new and exciting ways. And today, I'm really so thrilled to have a great lineup of speakers who are going to be sharing insights on a very, very important topic: how online assessments can be effective now and for the future. And this has become a common narrative since morning, as so many of you have been asking about different kinds of assessment methods that are going to be working out in this new blended model or a hybrid model of learning. Before I pass my session to the moderator, if you have any questions for the panel, there will be a live Q&A session towards the end of 15 minutes. Please make sure that you put your questions under the questions tab on Swapcard. Now, without further ado, I would like to pass this time to Rudiana, who is the moderator for today. Over to you, Rudiana.
Thank you, Preeti. Hi, everybody. Good to see you all here today with me. We want to have a discussion about the online assessments. I'm Rudiana. I'm from St. Peter's School, and I'm in charge in International Curriculum Coordinator in my school. So I want all participants or all panelists to introduce yourself. Start from Michael.
Yes, so kia ora, and also salamat datang. So I'm Dr. Michael Harvey. I'm a senior science teacher, originally from New Zealand, and I'm also digital lead at Marlborough College in Malaysia, just across the Singaporean border. So you might hear the F-15 jets flying across now and then from the Air Force.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Now we go to Mr. Chok.
Hi there. So I'm Pak Chok. I'm with the Atmika School Bali as the head of accreditation here. I'm also part of the committee for SPK Associations, coordinator for Middle Indonesia. Happy to join these sessions and looking forward to share with everyone.
Okay, thank you, Pak Chok. Now, Alex.
Hi, good afternoon. It's very exciting to be here with everybody. I'm Alexander, but I come as Alex. And from Brazil, I'm the head of school at Sinarmas World Academy.
Thank you, Alex. Now, the last but not least is Mr. Madi.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Madi Heri Santosa. You can call me Harry. I'm teaching in Ganesha University of Education in North Bali. Apart from teaching, I'm also working in some associations. I'm director of program in Indonesia Technology Enhanced Language Learning. I'm also director of Community of Service in Indonesia Extensive Reading Association. And I'm also CEO of Susila Dharma application for virtual reality. And I'm the founder of Bali Edukasi, who is helping for disadvantaged students in Bali. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Wow, such a great panelist here. Okay, so today the topic, the one that we want to discuss is the how online assessment can be effective now and for the future. So as we know that the last 9 years, we already changed our ways of learning. Yeah, so we changed remote learning. It's not only the students have to learn remotely, but also the teacher have to assess them remotely also. So we want to know how the during the discussions, I want to divide into 3 phases. One is the what on and how online assessment is, and the second one, the technology as the tools of the online assessment, and the third one, the goal, the feedback, and the future of the online assessment. Now, we want to start our discussion first. So, the first one, I want to to Michael. What do you think are the most effective forms of the online assessment?
Well, I think the most effective forms are low stakes assessment. So rather than trying to formalize the assessment, you're just getting small pieces of information over the course of a learning cycle to allow you to kind of mediate the lessons. Because one of the advantages of being online is the ability of being able to differentiate lessons for the individual students. So if you're getting that quick, short feedback, which doesn't put pressure on the students, you can use that information then to kind of cater for their weaknesses and also their strengths. And I think one also has to consider that assessment can come in many different forms. We'll probably go into later what good tools for this, but they can be short quizzes, they can be using video, so they're explaining a concept, for example. We've also got to not forget that social emotional learning is important as well. So even assessing the social emotional learning of the students, for example, just a short color-coded system. Every week the student just checks in saying, I'm green for good, I'm yellow for, or I'm finding it a bit of a problem, or red that I'm struggling with this. So it's just kind of instant, quick feedback, which you can then use to direct your teaching.
Oh, okay. So what can I have from your statement is just like the assessment should be like the feedback of the course. So it can be, it should be that different, like support all the learner style, like differentiate learning like that. So from the previous session, I heard that nowadays in the remote learning, not only the teachers has to design learning like the lesson, so the teachers also can have to design the best assessment for the students also. So regarding to this one, now I want to ask you, Mr. Made, that what is the qualities of the effective assessment in the online learning context?
Thank you, Ibu Ruth. Just to continue from what Alex said just now, it is true that we can differentiate learning and in terms of assessment, so we can vary our tasks to cater and accommodate differences in one class. Apart from differentiating your tasks, also you have to suit your situation, because now we are having remote learning. Before this, probably we have emergency remote learning. Now people already have time to plan remote learning, but it doesn't go as smooth as they want probably. So when you have remote learning, you need to suit your curriculum, your learning objectives, and that way then your assessment must change. Talking about the qualities of effective assessment, you cannot avoid the principles of good assessment. People already know this one, but just to remind you that there are some basic principles of good assessment. The first one is validity, meaning that your assessment must measure what it is supposed to measure. For example, if you want to test speaking skill, then the test must ask the students to perform something orally. Another one is called reliability, meaning that your test must be consistent in whatever condition, no matter if different instructors doing the test. So the result, the quality of the test is also the same. Another thing which is important is called practicality, meaning that your test must be practical, must be handy, doesn't need, for example, sophisticated machines or tools to run or to deliver. Some other add things like authenticity, so it must be contextual, it must be also economical, meaning that it doesn't spend too much energy and time and money from you as the assessor. So, and to combine this into online learning, first, all the principles must be followed, and then your test must be giving opportunities for your students to learn both inside the classroom and after the classroom. So this is the online part comes in. So everything must be able to accommodate the students' learning, what they know, what they can perform, and also what they can reflect from their learning in whatever situation, especially in this remote situation. Thank you. I think that's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Made. Based on your statement, that one is like the qualities is referred to the principle of the good assessment, that three. Okay, so one of them is reliability. This is the one that maybe all the educators maybe put the big question mark during the pandemic, because we cannot see the students. We are not there when we assess them. So it's like more like, is it fair? Is it reliable? That's the questions that many from us, like the leaders in our schools, so many teachers said like that. So I want to jump the questions to Mr. Chok. How fair and reliable an online assessment is?
Well, this is true, Ibu Ruth. We've been facing this assessment online, and the problem will be fairness, and the other one will be reliability on this one. What I have in mind is that as long as the teachers are doing assessment with the thinking that assessment is part of testing, then it will likely the, the fairness and reliability will be getting lower. You know what I'm saying? So we have to shift from assessment as a testing to make it real that assessment is a part of a process of collecting evidence. So collecting evidence for performances, say for example, collecting evidence for achievements. If the teachers now moving from testing to what we call as collecting evidence, suddenly they will have a wider range of options to do the assessment. They can start using many kind of tools for assessment. They can do the assessment as many as needed, and they will also be able to, you know, minimize what one of the biggest concerns in online assessment is cheating practice. It's true that, you know, we don't know what happened on the other side when we are giving online assessment. We don't know what happened, or who helps the students on the other side. What we know now is we give them a testing, usually that happens, and they can get a help. So it's not fair for everyone. By having a time frame for collecting the evidence, we reduce the anxiety of the students, and they can start to ask their peers about the feedbacks, and also their teachers about the draft of the assessment that they have. They start to make a timeline. They read from so many sources, and finally on the submission day, they are feeling confidence to have their own words. So this will of course help everyone, including the teachers and also the students, to ease the pressure on online assessment. Ibu Ruth.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, so to make it fair and reliable, because I remember one of the statement of our MOE that they said that during the pandemic, it cannot be as efficient as the one that offline learning. I agree with that one, because but we as the educators in here, we need to make the one that not efficient become measured, like the one that Mr. Mahdi said. So if it is like that, I want to ask to you, Alex, what is so with all the challenges and whatsoever that the quality that the assessment needs to have, so what are the end goals of the online assessment, do you think?
Well, coming after what Michael, Bachar, and Pamadit said, the end goal of assessment, there are two lines of understanding. If you ask a parent, the line of assessment is the measure of knowledge, and that's the most common understanding. And this is the paradigm. This is what we educators are trying to change. We don't assess for knowledge. We can also assess for learning. As Michael said at the beginning, assessment is a way to find out how much the student has retained of the knowledge, but also how much the student has acquired in terms of skills transfer, and how applicable that knowledge will be in real life. So the end goal of assessment, in my understanding, and when I teach, when I prepare my lessons, when I face my students, I believe that the assessment is to develop a student that wants to learn, wants to be a lifelong learner, and that student can always keep that desire to challenge themselves. It's the grit, the winning mindset. So that's for me the goal of assessment, online or on site. But now we're facing an experiment that has never been done before in history and would never be possible hadn't we faced the pandemic, which is to flip the educational system. We're teaching from home, we're not interacting face to face. And as Pamade said and Pachok also mentioned, we need to focus as well in the well-being of the student and the mental health. It's not only pushing the boundaries for exceeding the mark or going above and beyond in terms of achievement or academic achievement or qualitative achievement. It's also how to achieve this high quality, how to monitor how authentic this assessment is, and at the end of the day, still have a student who is motivated.
Okay, so I agree with this one. So we have to make the assessment as authentic as it be by like moving our mindset that the assessment is only for the measure of the knowledge. Nowadays, we cannot measure of the knowledge. It will not, for me, if it is only testing, like Mr. Chok said, it will not be fair or reliable. It should be like the collecting evidence by the measuring of process of learning. So I agree. So now we move to the phase two, the one that nowadays we involve about the learning process is the technology. So some of school using the Apple, some of school using the Google, some of school using Microsoft and any other platform. So I want to ask the Alex, what technology tools could be most helpful for online teachers looking for a different approach to assessment?
Well, as you said, we use multiple platforms. In my understanding, the best tool is the tool that has been agreed upon as a commitment from the academic team, because that will drive efficiency and effectiveness in the delivery and then what we're discussing here, the assessment. Because if, let's say the five of us here are teaching grade 7 in the same school. I am on Google and you are in Microsoft, and then somebody else is in Moodle and somebody else is in a different platform. That will create something that is inconsistent and will generate chaos for the parents as well as for the students themselves. We want to multitask, and we're talking about all of that, but consistency for me is the best tool. Google has evolved a lot, and so has Microsoft with the Microsoft Education, and Apple has amazing tools, and we have many other tools for online delivery. And I never saw so many startups in the tech industry as we have had since January. So bottom line, it's a tool that is a common understanding, and it's a shared agreement with the faculty and a good information for the parents and the students on their expectations.
Okay, so it has to be agreed in the internally of the schools stakeholders that the platform that we will use. So I want to ask the impact of the online assessment and the technology that we use. You know, before the pandemic, we always said that we have to limited the screen time between of the students in one day. But now, you know, if it is like 7 to 12, that one is 5 hours, that maybe, yeah, 80% or 4 hours that they will be doing the screen time. So I want to ask Pak Cho, what are the impacts of online assessment towards towards teaching and learning?
Well, it's so huge, Ibu Ruth. The impact is tremendous because it's totally different with what we used to do. Basically, what we have now, online assessment is, as I said previously, that is when it's part of collecting evidence. Now, students need to have much more independency on their both on their learning and also some kind of their self-assessment. This way, teachers now need to be very creative in training these skills to the children, because later on when we are using online assessment, we need the students to be independent on doing the self-assessment. I was thinking about this one. Everyone knows now that a flipped classroom, Alex just mentioned about flipping the classroom, which is actually, I don't know, probably the flipped classroom is prepared before this pandemic, and someone who did this one is overseeing it. If things happen like this, then I was thinking the flipped classroom will be helping us so much in handling you know, the impact of online assessment in a way that we can give students materials as much as we need. A majority, we can give them the videos, we can give materials, the students will learn this one at home. And then when we have the online session to talk about, to discuss, it's not again about delivering the materials. It's now going more on discussing what sort of problems or which area that the students are struggling with instead of delivering the materials. This way, everyone now has more time to you know, research, to do the research on their own, and then contact you know, teachers for feedback, and also the peer for also what's that, comments on anything. So this kind of impact needs some kind of adjustment from both sides, the teachers and also the students. And we really need to give some kind of a platform where we can train both parties and take the benefits of this one. Ibu Ruth.
Okay, thank you. So, you know that there are a lot of ways for giving the online assessments, like the teachers make the content by themselves, like we use the LMS, like we use the platform, the one. So, I want to ask you, Michael, what online tools are the best for assess learning?
Well, it depends what you want to assess. So, I mean, as Alex said, I think it's important that students basically and teachers only provide 3 to 4 tools that they're using. That way it gains consistency, the students become used to that particular process. I'm getting the impression though that we seem to be seeing assessment as a summative process, whereas I see, for example, feedback as being critical to the assessment process. Very much formative. So students do a task, then you're providing feedback, they're looking towards improving. But in terms of the 3 go-tos that I like to use, so there's the online platforms like Quizzes and Kahoot. They give short, sharp answers immediately, so you can test misconceptions of that class immediately. And then you have ideas around Flipgrid. Okay, so Flipgrid is another great tool where the students are explaining concepts verbally. That's actually quite useful for EAL learners. Because sometimes they do find the written task quite challenging in terms of language skill, but if they can use images to work around, they can explain the information in different, more interesting ways. And I think the importance of these digital portfolios. So my 3rd go-to is Wakelet, where the students are actually creating digital portfolios, evidence of learning through the entire learning cycle, which they can then go back on as well. And you can provide feedback, you can iterate, you're kind of in a partnership with the learner to drive them forward in their learning in that kind of process. So those are my 3 kind of go-to applications.
Okay. I just want to curious to this, Michael, because you said that you are the science teachers. You know, science is involving practical assessment like that. So, during this pandemic, how you do the science teachers overcome with these challenges?
Very basic kitchen chemistry. So as a physics teacher, for example, my last lesson was boil some hot water and put a piece of butter on the end of 3 different spoons. One spoon is made of metal, one spoon is made of wood, one spoon is made of plastic. So just time or just see which one the butter melts in first. So that's kind of a very basic experiment, which still teaches you about the concept of conduction quite effectively. Yeah.
Okay, so you just like adjustment with whatever the material that they can find at home.
Yeah.
So they are
Whether they
experts.
can find at home, a bit of kitchen chemistry.
Okay. Now I want to ask Mr. Made, the one that you know, like usually the one that involves technology is like mostly it should be like if you use this one in the one school, if we use like Apple School or Google Classroom, everybody need to be use the same platform because of the fairness. So if it is like in this matter, what do you think that how does technology assist students in the self-assessment and peer assessment?
Thank you, Ruth. So just to summarize what Alex, Michael, and Joe also already mentioned just now. So I do agree that in terms of assessment, we have to go bit-sized learning, so chunk learning. So like what Michael said, try to do more formative now. So taste or get to know what students can understand in a periodical time, very short, like every week or every topic, that will help and guide them into giving or facilitating the students to achieve the learning objectives. Also, Alex mentioned several things like tools. There should be agreement with tools. This is true. Just to add that, remember that technology is only a medium. So no matter what tools that you use, you have to suit it to what you need. So what is the lesson about, and what does the lesson need for the students to be able to? So like Pak Chok mentioned just now, flipped learning or flipped classroom, it has been there. But now everything is evolving. Flipped learning or flipped classroom becomes remote flipped learning, where the classroom part becomes online classroom. So changing into that way only. And in terms of self-assessment, what Michael mentioned just now is a part of also collaborative learning, doing projects. And this is a part of authentic assessment where students conduct experiments, something very contextual to them. And if you want, you can ask the students to evaluate or assess the other friends or even themselves. So while doing the projects, they can assess themselves. The teachers can provide rubrics or guidance like checklists, and then students can self-assess themselves. Or you can also do peer assessment where students are given the same checklist, but the idea is the other friends assess their partners or their classmates, for example. So whatever it is, technologies are tools. Today is new learning era where you have to stop thinking what technology and how many technologies that you are going to use in your learning, but start thinking, if I use these technologies, what I can do with these technologies to help my students to achieve the learning objectives. Several tools are a lot now. There are a lot of tools available. For example, if you use quizzes like what Michael said, or Kahoot, or other things, this can be a good way to train the students to do self-access learning, SAL, where they can, check their understanding by themselves. The teachers must provide the test or the quizzes, and then the students can do that by themselves in any time. So you can use other offline things. This is interesting. In the Indonesian context, online capacities probably are not available in many areas, as many locations are not good in having internet connection, for example. So again, because this is tool, you don't have to go to online tools. You can use offline tools. If we are using quizzes, for example, you can substitute the online quiz like Quizzes and Kahoot by using, for example, Hot Potatoes, Wondershare, or iSpring, using iSpring program, for example, embedded into Microsoft PowerPoint. So things like this can also go. So no matter it is, focus on helping the students to understand the topic or the content that you are going to teach. So this is about pedagogy actually. So revisit your pedagogy when you teach, and assessment must be included there inside of the process of learning. So self-assessment can be very good now, but things that you have to consider when you do self and peer assessment, make sure that your students understand the way they assess themselves and the way they assess their peers. Yeah, otherwise they just go, for example, I teach academic writing, for example, they just go into something technical like grammar, comma or full stops. They don't want, or they are not really comfortable or confident into going into contents of their friends. So pay attention also to cultures, Ibu. So Asian, for example, except some countries where cultural, perspective are strong. So hierarchy is strong, then you have to really think about this, how to make your learning go efficiently and effectively, and do not forget to check their understanding using bit-sized test or assessment. Thank you.
Okay, interesting, yeah, Pak Nadir, because the one that you said that, I think one of your quote is like I related with the previous session. Like nowadays, it's more on, actually it's more on pedagogy than to technology. The technology is only tools. So the one that how we design the lessons and how we design the assessment is the matter.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to add, Ibu, just to add, this is called a critical approach. So if you follow Warschauer works in 1995, for example, there are two streams or two big views. One is on instrumental approach. The other one is on determinist approach. The instrumental approach are those who likes to use tools like technologies. And the other is, focusing on strategies and pedagogies. Actually, today, especially in remote teaching, you have to critically integrate these aspects. This is called critical approach. Thank you.
Okay, so it's getting interested why this online assessment, it will be more and more developed in the future also. Because I related to your statement also, the one that project-based learning. Because in the future, there are more field of work that needs self-empowerment. So the project-based learning skills that we give to the students actually will become very helpful for their future. Now we want to see the one that in the phase 3, the one that our discussions about the future and the feedback and the goals of the online assessment. The first, I want to ask to Alex. Actually, if you know that during the pandemic, there are so many teachers also giving assessments, maybe it's beyond capacity or whatever of the students. So it makes also parents overwhelmed about the assessment. Yeah, maybe for my point of view, that one is not correct how to measure, yeah, Pak, yeah. The one that we know we discussed before, to measuring. So what do you think that the most pressing concerns you hear from teachers, students, and parents regarding online assessment?
Well, the concerns are many, and mainly now in terms of pandemic, parents are nervous because they want to understand the process better. Many parents are also working from home, and they can see their children and what they're doing, and they monitor. So the process of teaching has become more transparent, I believe. And this transparency brings a degree of nervousness in the parents. When the parents are not educators and they come from a complete different system of education. They were educated 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and education was completely different. And with the advancements of technology, that this scales us like twice a year. If we don't catch up with what's coming new, we become obsolete. So parents are concerned for, first of all, lack of understanding. The students are concerned in terms of, am I doing well? What my grades will look like? And the teachers are concerned with the amount of work. I have heard here with our team that the teachers are being able to cover more in the online setting than it would be covered in terms of content and knowledge in the classroom setting, in the face-to-face. Then it comes a concern to everyone. Is more better? The fact that we can cover more pages of the book or more handouts, are we allowing the students to become more knowledgeable and improve their skills, like listening or reading and writing, or even thinking and transfer? So these are all concerns. How valid, or what will be the result of the remote learning or the hybrid model of teaching and learning during and after the pandemic? So there are concerns, and one of the concerns parents actually have, and it has affected many schools, is the value of the education. Is it worth the time of the students? Is it worth the effort? And then for me, I believe another huge concern is for schools in which not all students have a device in their hand. So the learning is not happening. Yeah.
Okay. Then if it is like that, yeah, I agree with the different level of the parents, yeah, the financial also, and even the education level of the parents. That one is also make the parents worry. So I want to ask about the cycle of the assessment. The learning cycle as assessment, what does the feedback come into the online assessment itself? To Michael. So what does feedback come into the learning cycle as assessment?
Comes in right at the start. So basically feedback is intertwined at all points. So right from the beginning, right till the end, even with the summative assessment in a sense. Because one concern with students is they get a little bit obsessed with grades and not in the feedback. So it's always a danger if you give a grade and you also give feedback, they become overly obsessed with the position in class, for example. So you've got to reinforce that learning as an individual pursuit in the sense, and they're competing against themselves to improve. So feedback is critical right from the start. So what I usually do is I have a diagnostic test at the beginning where I kind of see where the class as a whole has weaknesses. I design my lessons around that. And then through the unit, we're having small little low-stake tests where I see where if individual students are getting the information and whether they can, and how they can improve. That's where the feedback comes in. So even with something like quizzes, you can see where the class is in terms of their position and understanding, and you can give individual students feedbacks on their strengths and also their weaknesses, so they can build on their strengths, but also kind of fill in those weaknesses and see how they can improve. Learning is a lifelong process. We need to kind of embed that into our learners, and so we need to make sure that feedback is at the heart of our assessment.
Okay. So It's like a diagnosis and then pre-test and post-test. Yeah. So now we are talking about the future. I want to go to Pak Chok first. What is the one major factor that will bring online assessment to different level in the future?
One major factor. Ibu Ruth, I'm trying to do that one because if we can say the one major factor that will affect the pace of assessment will be internet. Now it takes almost 20 years, I guess, until from the beginning of internet is founded, invented, until we are able to do, interactions virtually like this one with the 4G. And now last year and this year, smartphone companies now are already releasing the smartphones which is compatible for 5G, which is 100 times faster than what we have now. So if today with the 4G we can do this thing, and Janipur research has also estimated that in the 2025 there are around 1.4 billion 5G active users, which is half of what the 4G active users today. You can imagine in your wildest imagination what will be happening. I am thinking that we are going to see hologram of us, each of the students are looking at, and we can monitor the students in 2030 later on. So basically, yes, it is safe to say that internet will be the one major factor that brings changing to the online assessment.
Okay, so that the internet, yeah, technology of the internet and with the other friends. Okay, so the last but not least, this is I think for Pak Made. So how one size doesn't fit all is reflected in the online authentic assessment in the future.
Yes, thank you, Burut. As what Michael, Alex, and Pacho already mentioned just now, well, technology develops very fast now. You can have like 5G, a hologram, whatever it is. But then again, you have to go back to the concept of assessment itself. So when you want to assess, try to focus what you are going to do with assessment. So you know that when you assess, you want to check first what our students know. This is basic, so this is like knowledge base. But then because of the development of global world now, you cannot stop into something low order thinking like this, just memorization, for example. And then you have to go what your students can do with their knowledge. And then what does our students can reflect from what they learn to improve themselves in the future. So go back to the concept of assessment. And as I said before, assessment is a part of learning process or pedagogy. So don't forget to plan your lesson, to implement your lesson with many modifications if necessary. And later, you have to check your students' understanding through assessment, no matter types of assessment that you are going that you apply. It is very difficult and challenging at the moment. Yes, parents, schools, students, teachers are working harder than before. Just want to add what Alex mentioned just now in terms of parents' concerns and with different types of education. Last time I shared about a project of making digital story with secondary schools. So the idea of this is that we as the teachers, we as the teacher explain first while having them into activities of creating a digital story, but then we don't tell the tools from the beginning. I don't tell the technology, because with millennials or Gen Z, if you mention the name of the apps from the beginning, they will search for the apps, they will not listen to you, and then done, sir, or done, ma'am. But do they understand? Do they learn meaningfully? So you have to facilitate and be with them. And to involve parents, you just can give the students or parents some tasks to do. For example, interviewing their parents. In that way, you try to involve the other parts other than students more then. In terms of feedback, for example, in internet now, yes, it can be very fast. It can be, robots will help us. But again, you cannot rely too much on machines. For example, if you use ACBot, an artificial intelligence-based program for creating articles, for example, with ACBot, you can type the topic, for example, learning autonomy, and then it will give you the first paragraph. And then you can continue until you have 15 pages completed with references in different styles, whether it is APA, MLA, Chicago, and so on. But the question is that you don't teach them, your students, to create an article using machines, smart machines like this, but you have to equip themselves with the skills needed for the future. For example, ask them to analyze the product of the essay done by the machines. That way, you are teaching them the skills of the future. One of them is, for example, critical thinking. The other one is if you ask them to communicate what they analyze, you are teaching actually communication. So things like that. So again, in terms of one size doesn't fit all. So use whatever tools that suit you. You cannot just rely into one tool. It doesn't have to be online. You can also go with online, but remember the goals of your learnings, because assessment is helping the students to reach the learning objectives. So the tools comes next. Yeah, thank you.
Such interesting discussion, yeah. But the time is not enough. Now it's time for us to respond the one in the audience questions. The first I want to ask, this one is from Chris. Are performance tasks or authentic assessment strategies playing a bigger role in remote or online setting? I want to ask, I want Mr. Made to answer because you are talking about the authentic before.
Yes, Guru, thank you. This is a good question. Thank you, Chris. Actually, authentic assessment can go in any situations. But talking about remote or online setting, authentic assessment can also be utilized to help the students to understand, to check their understanding. So for example, like what Mike said, you can employ digital portfolio project where every week, for example, you have a long-term project and then every week they have to report what they have finished, for example, and not finished into a folder, whether it is digitally or not digitally. Again, it is only a tool. And then, yes, it can play a bigger role because if you focus on the way you assess into something authentic. You can also use, for example, project-based. Like what I mentioned just now, I conducted a project-based learning type. So at the end, I have like 100 of digital stories from the students that I check again, and then now is in the process of publication. So give something also motivating when students doing their assessment, because motivation is very important too. Thank you, Ibu.
Okay. There are a lot of questions this one, yeah, but we cannot answer one by one, so we try to answer the one that I will choose. Okay. I want to ask to, this one is for Pak Cho. Most of us is in Indonesia teach many classes. Each class can consist of maximum 40 students. It's hard to give feedback to individual students after they submit their task to platform or LMS. Any ideas, sir?
Yeah, 40, oh my goodness, yeah. Well, this is happening in classroom in Indonesia for for sure, because of the big classroom that we have. Actually, we need to employ what we call you know, feedbacks from the peer, and also feedbacks from also other source. You cannot just do the feedback by yourself. Well, we know that immediate feedback, to make immediate feedback available is important one. I mean, if the students are collecting their evidence today and you give them like 2 weeks after that one, it will be useless actually. So how to put this immediate feedback is to make sure that they can do self-assessment. That's the first thing. So they can check their own work. How to do that one, of course, the teachers needs to provide some kind of a rubrics or kind of a guidelines, you know, this expected evidence. Sometimes the teachers can also give samples and discuss this one with the students. Like, for example, they can give, this is a poor evidence, a sample of a poor evidence, and this is an example of an excellent evidence, which is expected. That they discuss about this one. Once they understand the expected evidence that the teachers wants, and they speak the same language, then they can do their self-assessment by themselves, and the peer can also help the teachers to do that one. Suddenly, the teachers are seeming to be so much clever and professional. Oh, I'm doing all the feedbacks, which is actually we trying to maximize the potential of our students. And in addition to this one, we are teaching our kids as what we call to be an independent learner, because this online assessment at the end of the day will demand a high amount of independency from our students. Ibu Ruth.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cho. This is the one that from Rina Nursanti, and she particularly wants to ask you, Alex, how to make assessment which relevant to for vocation students that fits the industry of company.
Oh, that's a really good question, very interesting. And if we go on problem-based learning and we go on the more hands-on approach, let's look into high school, IGCSE levels or A levels or grades 9 to 12. In that point, the students will take a lot of subjects which are related to their desires on the university and related to their future careers. So if they're doing economics, why instead of giving a simple project that is reading from the book or doing research online, they find a business, they approach somebody in their families or in the neighborhood, or somebody they know that has a small or a big or any size of business, to investigate that aspect of the syllabus. Let's say if they're doing business management and they're studying market shares. So try to find somebody, we could find a person online in LinkedIn who works in a bank or somebody we know or in the family. And then what can you tell me about that? How does that impact your daily professional dealings? So assessment can be tailored to vocational. Engineering using physics or math applications, sciences towards the biomedical studies. So if it's project-based and problem solving, I believe it's the hands-on approach can allow for alignment with the vocational.
Okay, so it's like whatever that they learn in the 9 to 12 that will be related to their university pathways, right? Okay. This is the last questions. Maybe I can give to Michael about how do you control online cheating? What are some of the tools available to mitigate that?
Well, it's all about the assessment, isn't it? So basically, if you're answering or asking questions that are just simple recall questions, then it's very easy for the students to Google those answers. But if you're kind of clever with the questions, So as a science teacher, for example, what I do for my assessment is that I've taught them a particular scientific principle in a particular context. And then for the assessment, I provide a completely different context for them to apply that knowledge in. So that way it's very difficult for them to Google the answer, because it's a completely new context that they're dealing with. So I think the key is in terms of this kind of assessment, if you want to using it for summative assessment to rank the children, even though that's not probably the best thing, but we do that because that's what our schools tell us to do. So yeah, the best, most effective way is just how we're structuring the questions. So those questions should not be just simply recalling facts. They have to be applying knowledge in new context, developing those critical thinking skills. So it could be just reading a paragraph about a particular argument, and then they have to create an argument for that or against that, for example, if it's English literature. So yeah, I think we have to be very careful about just trying to create the same assessments for the new environment that we are in.
So it's simple, like if you want the students not cheating online, change the questions. Yes. Okay, so this is an interesting discussion. So we know that assessment is a part of our learning process. So during this remote time, assessment, we still need to assess the students. But as the one that we mentioned before, that we agreed before, it's not about tools. It's about pedagogy. So it's like how you structure your lessons, how you know your students, and you can find the best assessment tools for them. But of course, the platform, the technology is only the tools. So we can come later. Yeah. So change the assessment, change the mindset about the assessment, that the lesson might go well, because at the end, we need to really go back to the principle of the assessments. What is that? What this assessment used to? Okay. Thank you, panelists. Thank you for such a great discussions to open our mind, to open our knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And, this was such a great session. A lot of questions that came in, as well. And I guess most of them were answered through the dialogue, that you had. For the audience, thank you for staying with us on this session. Our next sessions are town halls and masterclass, which is happening at 5 p.m. So if you have signed up for any of those sessions, please go on to Swapcard and join the link to the individual virtual rooms. Some of you also would have been invited to private roundtable sessions, so make sure that you join that as well. The links would have been sent out to you. Our platform is available after the conference as well. So, please do take advantage of connecting and networking with peers. And they're coming from, different parts of the world, not only Indonesia. And you can also catch up with the sessions that you've missed, and they're all available in the recorded version. So have a great day ahead, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the sessions, and we'll see you guys in our next production. Thank you so much, and signing off from EduTech Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you.